Unveiling Iran's miraculous biblical destiny. A divine journey of redemption and faith. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, besieged Jerusalem. Amidst this turmoil, a remarkable queen would arise in Shushan, a beacon of hope for her people. Esther, a young Jewish girl entrusted to her cousin Mordecai, rediscovered her identity amidst opulence. The palace of Xerxes was embellished with silks and jewels, yet she remained cloaked in secrecy, her Jewish lineage hidden beneath layers of regal splendor. In the air heavy with incense and laughter of courtiers, a shadow loomed, a decree of annihilation against her people by the wicked Haman. Esther's heart pulsated with tension, her spirit burdened by the weight of a looming tragedy she dared not expose. What if her elevation to queen could be a divine shield for the Jewish community? As she adorned herself for the day, an urgent visage pierced her thoughts. Her cousin Mordecai, his face lined with concern. "Do not think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews," he urged, his voice trembling with an urgency both raw and profound. "For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" His words struck like thunder, awakening a dormant courage within Esther's heart. The gravity of her mission felt insurmountable. Approaching the king without an invitation could lead to death. Yet Mordecai's gaze ignited a flicker of defiance within her. "If I perish, I perish," she resolved, driven by the faith of their ancestors and the whispers of hope that echoed through the corridors of time. Days passed in anxious anticipation as Esther clothed herself in royal garments adorned with rich colors and textures. The splendor of the palace contrasted sharply with her inner turmoil, yet she prepared, guided by silent prayers for courage and clarity. Finally, she entered the vast hall where King Xerxes sat upon his majestic throne. The smattering of laughter faded, eyes turning towards her. When their gazes met, surprise flared in Xerxes' eyes, quickly transforming into a gracious smile. "What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given you, even to the half of my kingdom." Time held its breath as Esther's heart raced, knowing the life of her people rested upon her shoulders. Strong arms of providence wove a tapestry unseen, drawing her towards a banquet where both Xerxes and Haman would gather. Pain and hope intertwined as she housed her burden within the lives of her people dangling in the balance. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As the banquet unfolded, Esther's heart beat with purpose, bolstered by prayers that fueled her resolve. She cast glances at Haman, the bearer of doom, and felt the weight of destiny coalesce around her. A fierce love for her people and an unquenchable faith in God's plan. The course of history hung in delicate balance, and with each moment, a divine orchestration loomed. Would her boldness be enough to avert disaster? Her heart whispered of hope, while the impending shadows of ruin closed in. Such was the urgency. What greater purpose did heaven hold for her in this tangled tale of life and death? As the fragrant aromas of roasted meats and fine wines wafted through the banquet hall, Esther took her seat beside King Xerxes, her heart a battleground of emotion. The gilded decorations sparkled under the flickering light of candelabras, yet they did little to quell the turbulent thoughts racing through her mind. The time had come, and the air buzzed with an unspoken tension, casting a shadow over the lavish feast. Xerxes, with his countenance radiant with joy, turned to her, his voice a mixture of curiosity and warmth. "What is your request, Queen Esther? Ask, and it shall be granted." Fortified by fervent prayers, Esther felt the weight of providence upon her shoulders, a divine mantle that pressed her to speak. "If it pleases the king," she began, her voice steady yet filled with urgency, Let the king and Haman come today to a feast that I have prepared for them. Intrigue flickered in Xerxes' eyes as he acquiesced. Bring Haman swiftly, he commanded, and the room flew into motion, servants scurrying to fulfill his words. Esther's heart thundered in her chest. This banquet was her first step toward revealing the hidden agonies of her people. As Haman entered, decadent colors and textures of his garments rivaled the opulence surrounding them. He wore the satisfaction of power like a crown, oblivious to the web of destiny tightening around him. The feast began, laughter and conversation flowing as freely as the wine. Yet in Esther's heart, dread intertwined with hope the moment to reveal her identity, and her people's plight loomed near as the courses progressed. Esther felt the Holy Spirit guiding her, urging her to wait for the perfect moment. With each bite taken and each cup raised, Haman basked in his glory, little knowing that the fabric of his fate was unraveling. Xerxes, still unaware of the hidden darkness gnawing at Esther's heart, finished the final course and turned to his queen once more. "What would you have me do, my dear Esther? Your heart is troubled." Then Esther, propelled by the pull of divine purpose, drew a deep breath, steadied herself, and spoke, "If I have found favor in your sight, O king, grant me my life, and spare the life of my people. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. If we had been sold merely as slaves, I would have held my tongue, for our affliction is not to be compared with the loss of the king's treasures." The silence that enveloped the hall was profound. Even the sound of feasting ceased. Haman's face drained of color as the weight of her words settled upon him. Xerxes' brow furrowed in disbelief. Who has done this? Where is he, and what is his purpose? With fiery resolve, Esther unfolded the tale of treachery, revealing Haman's wicked plot against the Jews. "The adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman," she declared, pointing with righteous indignation as a thunderstorm brews on the horizon. The king erupted in fury as he faced Haman, abandoned by his schemes and left bare. The atmosphere brimmed with divine tension, the will of God unfolding in the course of human history. Would Esther's courage lead to salvation, or would darkness prevail? The sovereign plan of the Almighty remained shrouded in divine mystery, yet divine deliverance stood on the precipice. The hour was near for God to reveal his powerful salvation, shattering the chains of oppression. Would Esther's faithful act usher in a new dawn of hope, or was there even more to be unearthed in this grand tapestry of his providence? Then the king, bewildered by the audacity of Haman's malice, arose from his seat in a burst of rage. His voice thundered through the opulent hall, filling every corner with the weight of his disdain. "You vile man, what have you done to my queen, to her people? For this betrayal you shall pay the price." Xerxes gestured for the guards, his face flushed with fury. Haman, sensing the tide turning against him, fell upon the queen's feet, pleading in despair, "My queen, spare me. I have acted foolishly. I meant no harm to you." But the depth of his treachery had rendered his pleas hollow, echoing eerily in the hushed silence. "Enough!" Xerxes boomed, turning on his heel. "Take this wicked man away from my sight, and let him be dealt with according to his sin." The guards, swift and resolute, grasped Haman and dragged him from the banquet hall, the footfalls of his doom reverberating ominously in the hearts of all who remained. Esther observed as the last vestiges of Haman's arrogance crumbled. Yet still, she trembled within, knowing the deliverance of her people was yet incomplete. As the king sat down, his gaze softened once more upon his queen, though a cloud of uncertainty lingered. "What shall I do now, Esther?" he questioned, the weight of decision heavy in the atmosphere. "Let there be a decree in your name, O king," she entreated, her voice imbued with gentle strength. "A decree that the lives of my people be spared, and let the wickedness of Haman be undone, for he has plotted their destruction." Xerxes nodded slowly, his mind contemplating the gravity of her words. "Then we shall act swiftly," he declared, tapping the great tablet before him, and calling forth his scribes. "Write as Esther commands, and let it be sealed with my ring that our people may be saved from annihilation." Esther watched as the king's hand moved, her spirit uplifted in prayer, rich with gratitude and an urgent hope that the unfolding events would align with God's sovereign plan. As the scribes wrote, whispers of the courtroom rippled through the palace, carrying tidings of salvation. Yet unfamiliar dread lingered in the hearts of the masses, caught in the deadly web Haman had spun. Enemies among them, emboldened by the king's disastrous proclamation against the Jews. One of the king's advisors, unsettled by the tempests of the day's events, approached Esther with caution. What will become of those loyal to Haman? Will they not seek revenge, emboldened by the fallen? Esther, aware of the spiritual warfare engaging them all, lifted her gaze to heaven. She felt a distinct stirring. Let us pray for our deliverance, for the hands of the Almighty are always at work even in the darkest times. Amid this gathering storm of fear and uncertainty, a profound revelation began to unfurl. The king stood upon the precipice, faced with a choice to enact a new era of security and justice for Esther's people. But the echoes of Haman's wickedness appeared further from concluded than they had anticipated. In that very moment, a messenger burst into the hall, breathless with news from the streets of Shushan. Darkness still lingered as Haman's allies stirred, and Esther knew in her heart, it was not merely a battle for survival that lay ahead, but the unfolding of a divine destiny God's promise long whispered through the ages now demanded fulfillment. On this day, she spoke to all those present, may we stand firm in faith, for the shadows shall not have the final word. God's salvation is coming forth, and new chains of bondage will fall away. Little did they know, the threads of the Almighty's plan would weave a legacy of hope that would echo through generations. The time had come for the hidden truth of God's hand to be revealed not through despair, but through miraculous redemption. As Esther's faith clashed with Haman's despair, the tapestry of salvation awaited the next stroke of divine wonder. As the orders were inscribed upon the tablets, a somber weight filled the air, heavy with the echoes of uncertainty. Esther's heart raced as she fully understood the gravity of the moment before them. The walls of the palace, once resounding with mirth and celebration, now trembled with the specters of treachery and bloodshed that had haunted her people. Bring forth Haman's decree, commanded Xerxes, his voice steady but laced with the remnants of palpable fear. The scribes hurried to execute the king's will, swiftly writing the reversal of the cruel edict that Haman had conjured so wickedly. Yet, Esther knew not just of the decree, but of the unseen battle unfolding in the spiritual realm, a clash between good and evil. Thus, as the edicts were sealed with the king's signet, there arose whispers among the advisers and nobles. They gathered in hushed tones, their eyes darting with intrigue and uncertainty. A question hung heavy within them. What shall become of the king's loyal servants, Haman's loyalists? Esther watched them, feeling the stirrings of doubt fester like a malignancy. Tell them, she interjected, her voice unwavering, to rally the forces of Haman, for they seek the heart of justice. Let not the enemy rise in fury, nor let us shrink in fear. Our strength lies in the unified voice of those who believe. With the decree sent forth, news traveled across the land like wildfire, a message not merely of survival, but a proclamation of hope. The oppressed lifted their heads, emboldened by the very act of God that led Esther to this moment. Yet, Esther prayed, O Lord of hosts, guide us in this battle that is not of flesh and blood, but one that echoes in the realms unseen. Meanwhile, Haman was brought before the judges, his fate hanging on the precipice of justice. The king, burdened by the weight of his own decisions, contemplated how to navigate the waves of ire that threatened to engulf him and his kingdom. What shall we do with this man, whose treachery sought to destroy a people and bring our kingdom to ruin? Let the gallows he prepared for Mordecai be his own undoing. One among the advisers suggested, echoing the spirit of retribution that gripped them. As word of this judgment spread, the hordes loyal to Haman stirred restlessly, their allegiance torn between grand ambitions and the reality of impending justice. Murmurs arose, fraying the fabric of their unity. Fear gave birth to betrayal, and treachery festered in the hearts of many, the likes of which the prophet Isaiah had spoken. When the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him. Isaiah 59 verse 19. Esther, gathering the women of her household, lifted her voice in lamentation and prayer. Stay strong, for our God sees what we cannot. His hand, moving through our plight, prepares a salvation that is yet hidden. And thus it came, an unexpected proclamation rang through the city. Mordecai was elevated to Haman's former seat, wearing the king's signet with authority marked by divine intervention. Seek justice, the king declared, and let our hearts turn toward mercy. The time has come for restoration. It was then that breaking news reverberated. A messenger burst into the hall with urgency. O Queen, the day of reckoning approaches. Haman's allies form a coalition against our decree, seeking to force our would-be destruction in defiance of command. Esther felt the tremors of dread, but her faith was unwavering. Let us not question the Almighty's plan, she whispered, for surely deliverance is at hand. Behold, O Shushan, goddess promise begins to bloom amongst the shadows. As tensions mounted, and the alliances forged through darkness drew near, Esther understood that goddess' sovereign hand was still at work. She steeled herself, holding on to the belief that amid the chaos, a holy destiny awaited the faithful courage of those who would stand firm. And in that moment, the fabric of destiny wove tighter, intertwining the fates of many a kingdom poised upon the edge of redemption. Little did they know, the threads of this intricate tapestry were being woven to reveal the ultimate design of God's purpose. What divinely orchestrated event awaited to catalyze the faith of his people? For even now, salvation was not just a promise, but a very present hope manifested through the courageous heart of a queen. As the shadows deepened over Shushan, whispers of treachery danced through the streets, threading fear and defiance among the people. Haman's loyalists, fueled by anger and betrayal, had forged sinister alliances, declaring that they would not merely reject the king's decree, but would rise up in revolt. The air stirred thick with the scent of impending conflict, and despair began to creep into the hearts of those once emboldened by hope. In the royal palace, Esther gathered her advisors, her eyes piercing with conviction. The time has come to act, not in fear but in faith, she declared, her voice steady like iron. Let us convene all the people, for our deliverance lies not solely in words but in the cry for justice that echoes heavenward. Boldly she announced, let there be a fast throughout the land. Word spread swiftly as a storm, and a sacred call resonated from the outskirts of the city to the distant corners of Persia. Pray for our people. Seek the face of the Lord. The callings melded into a chorus of supplication, rising to the heavens like fragrant incense. Meanwhile, Haman, shackled by the weight of his own conspiracies, stood awaiting his fate. His heart seethed with vengeance, a darkness that blindfolded him to the divine pivot unfolding upon the earth. Surely, the throne shall not be usurped by the very people I sought to destroy, he muttered in bitterness, unaware that goddess providence was orchestrating his downfall. Back in the palace, the spirit of unity began to weave through the faithful, drawing them closer as they offered prayers that mirrored the cries of their ancestor, David. Hear my cry, O God. Attend unto my prayer. Psalm 61 verse 1. Esther led by example, kneeling before her God with fervor, her heart beating in synchrony with the hopes of the nation. Do not forsake us, for without you, we are but a lost flock. Joab, a mighty man among the king's council, approached Esther. My queen, do you not fear the wrath of Haman's coalition? Many have already allied against us. His brow furrowed with concern, eyes alert to the brewing storm. Esther met him with firm resolve. The Lord of hosts walks among us, just as he parted the Red Sea for our forefathers. I shall seek audience with the king, for who knows whether I have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Esther 4 verse 14. Her words rang like the triumph of a battle cry, stirring the hearts of those around her. And thus, she prepared for her approach to Xerxes, donning her royal robes like armor, adorned with the grace bestowed upon her by divine purpose. As evening cloaked the city, a tangible anticipation hung in the air, a palpable acknowledgement of the battles fought long before them. Echoing the tales of their fathers in the darkened court, Xerxes awaited her. The flickering flames of the torches cast dancing shadows against the cold stone walls. Esther stepped forth, her heart trembling with the mix of fear and faith, knowing the risk she faced could cost her life. Yet, in that moment, all that mattered was the cry of her people and the faithfulness of her Geodet. As she approached the king's throne, a sudden hush fell across the hall. Xerxes, with furrowed brow and sharp eyes, beheld his queen, her beauty radiant even amidst the tempest of emotions swirling around them. A stillness enveloped, heavy with unspoken words. Esther, Xerxes inquired, "What ails you? For your countenance is troubled and pained." In the depths of her spirit, the truth of the matter enveloped her, and gathering her courage, she resolved to unveil the sinister plot that threatened her people. "O king, there is a wicked schemer among us, one who has devised a decree to annihilate my people, and he is none other than Haman himself." A gasp filled the room as those loyal to the king recoiled in horror, while Haman stood horrified, the realization of his treachery exposed. And so it was that the moment of reckoning loomed. The righteous would bring justice to light, and the hidden plots would be unmasked. What shall the king's decree be? Would the hand that held a scepter bring life or loathing upon the head of the traitor? The hearts of the people trembled in anticipation, for God's sovereign plan, shrouded in mystery, was poised to unfold. Would deliverance emerge from the storm? Or was this but the prelude to greater tribulations ahead? God's own tapestry of redemption was being woven intricately, as the faithful awaited the final threads to reveal his glorious purpose. At the moment of truth, Esther stood before Xerxes, her heart echoing the prayers of her people. No longer just a queen draped in royal robes, she became the voice of her generation, a vessel bearing the weight of her ancestors' anguish. "O king," she implored, "the decree that you have signed bears a curse upon my kin, a plot spun from the malicious heart of Haman, your trusted advisor." The words fell like arrows, piercing the silence that enveloped the court. Xerxes' brow furrowed deeper, a tempest brewing within his spirit. "What do you speak of, Esther? This cannot be," he retorted, rising from his throne, bewildered by the revelation that struck at the core of his kingdom. Haman, pale and trembling, choked on the air of his own treachery, the king's furious gaze like fire upon him. "My lord, I have acted in your best interest," he stammered, desperation threading through his voice. "These people are scattered, their faith a folly that weakens your reign." "No, exalted king," Esther replied resolutely, her voice unwavering as she stepped closer, emboldened by faith. "It is I who am of their lineage, who bear their plight. Their fate is intertwined with mine, and God's hand moves against us as a storm brews upon the horizon." The assembled nobles held their breath, caught in the tension between loyalty and the burden of truth. Wisdom dawned upon Xerxes. The king who had once believed his power absolute was now faced with a choice that could unravel his reign. "What must be done, O queen?" he inquired, his voice steadying as the enormity of the moment dawned upon him. Esther sensed the shift, a divine favor warming the air about her. "First, my lord, let us gather the evidence of Haman's plots. Let it be shown that he has woven deceit with arrogance. He has sifted the grain of my people, intending to destroy them in haste." Xerxes motioned to his scribes, who began recovering scrolls laden with the names of those condemned. But with each name penned, the reality of the treachery hit heavier, the fragile web woven by Haman now visible in a harsh light. Then, Esther continued, emboldened by the Spirit, "Let us turn this evil upon itself. For it was Haman who constructed the gallows for my uncle Mordecai, one who stood true to God's commands. Let his fate be reflected upon his own head." The king's face hardened, eyes narrowing at Haman. "Is it true?" Xerxes demanded, fire igniting his voice. "You would murder a man who saved my own life? Your accusations ring with the clamor of villainy." In that filled hall, the veil of Haman's deception began to unravel. With the condemnation freshly spoken, the king commanded, "Let Haman be taken hence, and let justice be swift." As the guards approached, a cry of horror escaped Haman's lips. "No, I am loyal. I am your servant." But his pleas fell upon deaf ears, drowned out by the resounding cries of the people outside the palace who resisted the oppression wrought from darkness. The decree of Haman lay now like a feather against the weight of the truth. A new edict was being written with restored hope, turning the tide for Esther's people. As murmurs of elation spread among the masses, the echoes of despair began to abate. But Esther, seeing the glimmers of hope on the horizon, sensed a deeper divine orchestration unfolding. Let our people have a day for rejoicing, a time for the remembrance of God's deliverance. And as the sun dipped beyond the horizon, illuminating the twilight sky, a ripple went through the hearts of the Israelites. The plan of redemption was unfolding, and their eyes were being opened to the promises written in the annals of their faith. Yet, far beyond the gates of Shushan, darkness was still plotting in shadowed corners. The heart of the nation hung in a delicate balance, for the ultimate victory would not emerge unchallenged. And thus, as the people readied themselves for the celebration of deliverance, they remained unaware that the final pieces of God's sovereign plan were still being assembled. For in every shadow cast, a greater light was about to shine forth, and in the heart of every turmoil, God was weaving a grander tapestry of redemption that would echo through generations. What more divine mysteries awaited as the story of Esther was woven into the fabric of deliverance writ by the Almighty hand. As the sun's rays faded, casting a warm hue across Shushan, the word of Haman's betrayal spread like wildfire among the cities of Persia. Hearts once heavy with sorrow now rejoiced. Hope flickered anew as the Jews looked to Esther, their queen, whose courage had steered the course of destiny. "Let there be a day of feasting," cried one of the elders, his voice ringing with fervor. "Let us turn our mourning into laughter and our despair into joy." The people gathered, their spirits lifted from the depths of despair, united under the banner of remembrance for their deliverance. Esther, her heart swelling with gratitude, knew that her words had ignited more than mere joy. They had fostered a faith reborn. As the palace buzzed with preparations, Esther composed an edict to be sent throughout the kingdom, ensuring that the day of rejoicing would bear the name Purim, in remembrance of the lot cast by Haman, which had threatened their existence. Xerxes sat upon his throne, his golden crown gleaming in the candlelight, a man transformed by the weight of truth and revelation. Feeling the shift in the atmosphere of his realm, he declared, "Let it be known, from the highest tower to the humblest of homes, this people shall be protected and honored. The plans of men cannot thwart the will of God." His declaration resonated through the hall, a king now allied with the God of the Israelites. Yet, unbeknownst to them, not all in the palace shared in the awakening of truth. Haman's loyalists seethed, their hearts hardened in bitterness. They plotted in the shadows, whispering of vengeance and retribution. "We shall not bow to this new decree," they whispered amongst themselves, a serpent's hiss against the winds of change that in the quiet of her chambers. Esther fell to her knees, her heart lifted in prayer. "O Lord of hosts," she beseeched, "you have delivered your people once. Let your hand guard them against the rising storm." The air shimmered with divine presence, and she felt a warmth envelop her, assuring her that the battle was not yet finished, but victory had already been ordained in the heavenly realms. Days turned into weeks, and the feast of Purim approached. Esther donned a royal garment of splendor, a visible shift from mere queen to intercessor for her people. She prepared her heart for the last confrontation with the seeds of darkness that still lingered, committed to ushering in the final act of deliverance as the appointed day dawned. The streets filled with songs of joy, laughter, and reflections of the miraculous rescue through Esther's bravery. Families gathered in celebration. Yet in the shadows, Haman's associates cast baleful eyes upon the festivities, targets of their malice set firmly upon Esther and Mordecai. "Rejoice not just in deliverance," Mordecai instructed, rallying those gathered. "For true victory lies in remembrance and unity. Let us pray fiercely and act justly. May God's light scatter the darkness still lurking." Yet, as night fell and festivities reached their peak, a hushed stillness swept through the gathered throngs. It was a darkness close at hand, not yet dissipated, a foreboding echo of Haman's influence still lurking behind the remnants of his defeated plans, and thus, in the heart of the revelry, a dread of sameness lay amidst the people, a flickering question of what truly lay ahead. their faith firmly rooted, yet the tapestry of God's sovereign plan was still unraveling. For while they celebrated, a more significant revelation awaited. Within the confines of the palace, threads of righteousness began to intertwine with a new order, one that stretched far beyond Shushan's gates, destined to change the course of history. What was God preparing in the shadows, unseen yet profoundly felt, as his people arose in faith? As the sun set over Shushan, casting a deep purple hue across the city, the celebration of Purim reached its zenith. The air was filled with the joyous laughter of families and the sweet aroma of festive foods. Yet, beneath the joyous revelry lay an undercurrent of anxiety and uncertainty, as the shadows of Haman's remaining conspirators hung heavily over the city. Mordecai, steadfast and resolute, gathered the faithful, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames of their candles. Brothers and sisters, though the enemy slinks away, violence may yet grip the hearts of our foes. Let us remain vigilant, united in prayers of thanksgiving and supplication. His voice, strong and authoritative, was met with solemn nods and fervent hearts. They prayed for divine protection, seeking refuge in the promises of God, as had their ancestors before them. Within the palace, Esther's heart wrestled with trepidation and determination. She found solace in the company of her servant girls, recounting the miracles of old, how the Red Sea parted, how manna rained down from heaven. "O Lord," she prayed fervently, "grant me the courage again to confront our adversaries. Strengthen my heart for the confrontation yet to come. Your name be my shield and my fortress." That evening, as the stars twinkled brightly overhead, reminiscent of Goddess' covenant promises, a shadow cloaked in malice overshadowed the city. Haman's followers, burning with rage, conspired to extinguish the light that had so fervently risen. They gathered in the darkest corners, fanatical and fierce, vowing revenge against the queen who had thwarted their master's plans. Their voices hissed through the night like the troubling wind. "Let us strike before the dawn." They celebrate, but they do not see that the serpent's fangs are still ready to bite. Meanwhile, news of the impending threat reached Esther's ear, delivered by a faithful servant. Her heart sank, but she knew the words of her cousin Mordecai echoed the wisdom from the ages. Unity in prayer was their strongest weapon. "Call the Jews of Shushan to fast and pray," she commanded, "for we shall not cower in fear but rise in faith." The people gathered in penitence, a mighty throng beseeching the heavens for salvation. They lifted their voices in unison, invoking the mighty hand of God to intervene once more. "Deliver us, O Lord! Cast down our enemies and deliver us from destruction." As the night grew darker, the shadows congregated, but Esther felt the unseen presence of God stirring. She remembered God's promise of deliverance, and it steadied her resolve. She donned the royal attire, now a symbol not just of her sovereignty but of her role as a defender of her people. "Though I stand before the king, I will not stand alone. I am guarded by the prayers of my faithful people." At the break of dawn, she approached the throne, her heart resolute. King Xerxes, seeing her humble yet courageous approach, was stirred and proclaimed, "What is your wish, Queen Esther? It shall be granted to you, even to half my kingdom." As she began to speak, the room grew dense with the weight of unspoken truths. The divine tapestry was unraveling, threaded with courage, faith, and the echoes of histories longed for. The climax of their conflict was at hand, and the enemies of righteousness were about to face the ultimate revelation of God's sovereign plan. For as Haman's plot was about to be unveiled, the true nature of God's justice began to shimmer through the fabric of Shushan's story, promising not just deliverance but a transformation that would reverberate through generations. What further acts of divine grace awaited in the shadows, poised to shatter the chains of oppression? In the heart of the chaos, God's throne remained sovereign, and his plans unfolded like the dawn of a new day. As the golden rays of dawn streamed through the palace window, the tension in the air was palpable. Esther lingered on the precipice of a monumental decision, her heart aglow with the sheltering prayers of her people. For such a time as this, she recalled the words whispered over her life, igniting a flame of destiny. Yet, The flickering shadows of treachery still loomed, threatening to rob her of this moment of intervention. Queen Esther, the king's voice broke through the silence, filled with concern. What troubles your heart? Taking a deep breath, fortified by the prayers of her ancestors and her own steely resolve, she addressed Xerxes with both grace and urgency. O king, if it pleases you, grant me this favor. My heart aches for my people, and peril looms over us as a dark cloud, a decree laid down by the wrathful Haman that threatens to annihilate us. The king's countenance shifted, fury igniting in his eyes. Who is he, and where is he who would dare to presume such horror against my queen and her people? Esther pointed a steady finger toward Haman, who stood naively at the side, his proud demeanor quivering as realization washed over him. This vile man, who seeks not only my ruin but the ruin of my kin, is he who has set this evil against us. Gasps erupted in the chamber, and the air buzzed with the weight of betrayal. Haman's heart raced as fear enveloped him like a shroud. Unseen forces churned as the machinations of heaven began to unfold, for the day of reckoning drew near. Xerxes, consumed by indignation, rose from his throne. An embodiment of justice stirred into action. Seize him. Let this wickedness bear witness to the consequences of treachery. His commands echoed through the vast hall, and guards swiftly apprehended Haman, leading him away bound by chains of his own. Making Esther raised her voice, infusing it with courage as great as the Lion of Judah. And I ask you, O king, grant us not only deliverance from this evil plot, but transform this anguish into a blessing for your loyal servants. The king turned his gaze upon Esther, his heart softened by the love reminiscent of the days when they first fell under the spell of affection. What shall be done, my queen, to celebrate this redemption? Let the decree of the Jews to defend themselves stand. Give them grace to act boldly, and let any who dare oppose them know their fate. With resolute determination, she demanded justice, a reflective mirror of Goddess' divine order. As murmurs of consent rippled through the crowd, Esther felt the weight of an ancient promise pressing upon her. The very words of the prophets echoed in her soul. You shall be my people, and I shall be your God. A renewed faith blossomed within her, intertwining the present with the sacred history of her nation. Suddenly, the king turned to Haman with piercing eyes that matched the fiery strength of his resolve. Your destiny lies in the hands of these women and men whom you sought to destroy. How has this moment come to pass? With bitterness clutching at him, Haman stammered, It is beyond me, O king, but I beg for mercy. The crowd watched with bated breath, and in that moment, angels might have held their breath too, for the curtain of fate swung wide open. Esther gazed into the depths of Haman's soul, her heart racing with divine anticipation. Here, at this crossroads of life and death, the very fabric of providence knitted a pathway that would alter their future forever. What further destinies were entwined in God's sovereign design? Would it be an end or a beginning that shaped their legacy? The answer lay just beyond their grasp, beckoning with echoes of faith and the promise of redemption through heavenly decree. And so it came to pass that the truth was laid bare before the court of Xerxes, as Esther's bold faith pierced the veil of darkness that clung to Shushan. Haman, once exalted, now trembled before his own ruin, the consequences of his wickedness unfurling like a storm. The king's voice boomed, declaring, Let justice prevail. What you intended for evil shall now be turned to good. As the guards bound Haman, a silence fell over the assembly, thick with the weight of impending justice. The whispers of Esther's people heightened, their hearts quickened by the promise of salvation. The adversary had overstepped, unleashing a plan that would return upon his own head. Indeed, the gallows he had erected for Mordecai would be his instrument of demise. Bring forth the decree, demanded Xerxes, his righteous indignation fueling the power of his throne. Let it be known that the Jews may defend themselves against their enemies, and all loyal to Haman shall face the fate their treachery deserves. With the swift stroke of the king's quill, the edict was written, sealed with the authority of his signet. It was a testament that bound heaven and earth with the reality of God's sovereign reign. Thus, even as darkness bogged down the hearts of many, Hope flickered alive in the spirit of the faithful. Esther found herself enveloped in the palpable presence of the Almighty, her heart buoyed by the waves of collective fervor that surged through her people. Pray and prepare, for today we stand on the precipice of divine deliverance, she proclaimed, flinging wide the doors of heaven in intercession for all who were afflicted. And so, the day of Purim dawned with radiant splendor, a festival not only of survival but of celebration, a commemoration of goddess intervention and Esther's bravery. Across the landscape of Persia, joy erupted like a wellspring. Voices raised harmoniously in gratitude for their deliverance. The laughter of children danced through the streets as families shared in the bounty of abundance, their hearts whole once more. But even amidst this revelry, a note of caution lingered in the air. Let us not forget the shadows of treachery that once sought to extinguish our light. Mordecai reminded them, his voice steeped in wisdom. For as the dawn breaks forth, we must vigilantly guard the blessings bestowed upon us. Faith and vigilance intertwined, for the heart of the nation echoed a deep yearning to remain steadfast within Goddess' will. Courage was their battle cry, and prayer their weapon of choice. They banded together as one people, united in purpose and resolve, their spirits buoyed by a divine partnership woven through time and the days that followed. The remnants of Haman's loyalists watched from the shadows, their schemes fraying as desperation took root among them. Many found themselves drawn into the same fate they sought to weave for the faithful, as the justice of God unfolded in ways that both astonished and terrified. Esther, now affirmed as queen and protector, aligned her heart with the voice of the Almighty. O God, your will be done on earth as it is done in heaven. May our faith propel us toward a destiny defined by your love and grace, she prayed, her voice a sweet hymn of gratitude and supplication. As the years rolled forth, the story of Esther echoed through the scrolls of history, her courage and faith transforming her kingdom into a living testament of Goddess faithfulness. The festival of Purim continued to flourish as a joyful remembrance of how the Lord turned sorrow into joy, and how, in the face of darkness, his light shone ever brighter. This was a narrative sealed in the hearts of generations, a reminder that the divine hand is forever at work in our deepest struggles, painting the tapestry of life with threads of redemption and glory. The unseen war was won, and the people of God marched forth, resolute in their faith, forever changed by the miraculous acts of the Most High. And so, dear friends, let your own lives echo the triumphant legacy of Esther. In moments of uncertainty, dare to embrace courage, seek Goddess wisdom and stand firm, for his plans for you are unequivocally intertwined with his purpose. Know without a shadow of doubt that with every step taken in faith, you are part of a grand narrative where the light will always triumph over darkness. Now, I urge you, do not let this moment slip away. Subscribe immediately to this channel to keep your spirit nourished with powerful biblical stories that inspire and transform lives. Like this video now to help spread God's word through the algorithm, ensuring that more hearts are touched by his truth. Comment below with your spiritual reflections and let us know how this incredible story of Esther has impacted your walk of faith. And don't wait even one more second. Share this powerful testimony with at least 5 friends who need the hope and truth found in Goddess love. Together, let's continue to bring the light of Christ into a world that so desperately needs it.